Hola, ¿cómo están? And what is going on, guys? DarkScheme here. Today I'll be giving you guys a quick walkthrough of the new arena map, Tyrant. So quickly here, we are on the sun deck, and you can clearly see why it's called the sun deck. Nothing too crazy, just a big old sun out in the near distance? I would say near distance. But there's definitely some interesting parts of the map as far as design. Nothing insanely crazy, but the basics of this map is pretty much a lot of hallways and sightlines. So the first part I will say is that this is a symmetrical map, meaning that you have both a blue side and a red side, or I guess I should start with red and blue on the other side. And they are very similar, they reflect the same side. Only difference is that there is a little bit more sun on the red side than there is the blue side. And there's this little island kind of connecting each base, and a man cannon here as well. Now I was trying to figure out if I could do anything cool with this man cannon, and unfortunately I don't think there is anything too cool. The only real thing that you could do is kind of just give your opponent the juke, thrust back, and kind of sit here on top of this blue rooftop, I'd like to call it. Kind of just come down here, and of course their flag sits here as well. And in blue base, you do get this BR star right here, and their window as well. So very similar sight lines, nothing too crazy going on. And if we continue moving towards the inside of the base, of course there's a ramp leading up here. And I guess I should point out these are some canisters. Just to remind you guys that those are there and they can explode at whatever moment if somebody decides to shoot that or to throw a grenade, so you might want to be careful. So we do have this sniper here, main point of interest right here. One thing that I think I'd like to focus on in this point is obviously you want to go for the power weapons at the start of the map and whenever they come up. So one easy thing to do is it's pretty easy to kind of throw grenades in, and even if you go towards your window, you can kind of just chug these grenades up this ramp, and if for whatever reason they are near this ramp coming from middle, you'll end up grenading them here as well. So it's kind of just a good way to keep them out depending on where they are running to try and get the weapons. And the same thing here with these pillars. They kind of have this purpose of throwing grenades while keeping your line of sight off of the enemies, just to make sure that you don't get into any necessary battles that you do not want to get into, and keeping yourself from taking a lot less damage. So going from this snipe ramp called Moon Deck and Junction, and if you guys want to know the callouts for this map, I quickly would like to point out that they are on the bottom left. Of course, pro players will be using different callouts, but that is kind of just to give you guys a day one start if you guys find yourself playing on this map. So there is a lower or bottom mid section to this, but before we get into that, I want to point out that I am in blue cave right now. So he kind of just extends all the way to the blue base. Once again, back in blue base. Nothing too crazy going on. There are a lot of ramps, and like I said, a lot of hallways. So once you get here, you want to make sure they aren't coming from their side of the base. At the same time, you want to watch this window, kind of poke into their base from this angle, as well as watch out for them if they are on the sun deck. Now there are some interesting things you can do with this lift, and the scatter shot I think is going to be a big deal on this map because, like I said, there are a lot of hallways. And for those that did not know that you could do this with a scatter shot, something cool about the scatter shot is that the shots do bounce off the wall. Of course, they're not going to be very effective, but if you know that there is somebody right around the corner, you might be able to get lucky and get a shot off. So definitely useful to know. So moving back down to this bottom middle area, there are a few little places that you can kind of position yourself just in case you want to get a little bit of a sight line, or if you kind of just want to sit here and bait out the scatter shot as well. There are some interesting things that you can do with the lift, and just to show you guys, the lift does take you out towards sun deck, towards this part of the map. But if you really wanted to, you can take the lift, and as you're lifting up, thrust back, and you end up top middle. Just a way to try and juke out your opponents, and just another way to keep in mind that you kind of want to use. And of course, if you wanted to, you could thrust right, thrust left, and you'll end up in a position where you kind of just throw your opponent off continuously. So going back down to bottom middle, there are these windows that are kind of just sitting here, and you can kind of just peek up here. I honestly don't believe this is too useful, but for whatever reason, if you are down here, somebody's trying to get to you, and you want to make a quick escape, you can clamber up on these ledges and get out of dodge. Now, I'm not sure how useful this will be. I think it's kind of cool, and honestly, this is really the only jump that I have really found, and of course, this is day 1, but it is there for you, and you don't have to use that pedestal there. You can... Well, if I don't end up falling off the map, get some sprint speed. You can kind of just clamber up this right here, and boom, you're out. So definitely interesting, and as you can see, we're back in Blue Cave. One thing that I will note is that it does get a little bit windy with a lot of the hallways here, so just to make sure and just to remember where you are, definitely look at the bottom left of the screen just to make sure that you know where you're going. So Blue Cave, going back over here towards the moon deck, go back up here to the junction, and once again there are some more hallway options. You can lead over here to Blue Base. This is their blue tunnel, and just to show you guys, there is 3 different options that you can use from here. You can go over to Sun Deck, back to your base, or you can go to Blue Tunnel, and from Blue Tunnel, or even from the blue platform, you can head over here, which is this kind of hidden tunnel. It might be useful to try and juke people out, and of course the red side has this as well. Definitely one way to try and get across, and definitely one way to get into the base to try and sneak in. I honestly think this map would benefit from having a camo power up. I think I could see a lot of sneaky routes from a lot of players here, and personally I think it'd make the map a little bit more interesting. As it is now, because there aren't any cool tricks, the map isn't interesting that way, but I think it is interesting because there is none of those tricks. I think it's a well-designed map. I personally have not yet played on this map in matchmaking, so I'm not sure how it plays out, and of course I am on Capture the Flag, and this map was designed for Capture the Flag and Assault game types. So it might play a little bit different for Team Slayer. And as far as weapon placements, I agree with where these are at. I think this map is a very big Promethean map aesthetic, so having all those Promethean weapons makes a lot of sense. I think one thing this map is missing, and it probably is by design, is grenades. The grenades that you can get, as you saw there, a splinter grenade right in your base on this little ledge here, and you can get 2 frag grenades right here at this map. So they kind of place frag grenades in a smart position. You kind of want to place frag grenades away from all the hallways, so these can really bounce around corners. And to try and make them a little less powerful on this map, you have to go to a distance where you have to go outside of the map. Definitely an interesting design to this. Once again, I have not yet played on this map, so we will have to see if this is useful at all. I think the only bump jump that I found is this one here. If you are sprinting towards it and you use thrust while you're sprinting, you'll kind of just use this little ramp above and just boost through. And you can use this to jump into top middle, something like that. It doesn't really give you that much distance, so personally I think it's not too interesting, but you can also use it if you want to get in sneaky into these tunnels here. Kind of just another way to get you across the map a little bit faster and into your enemy team's base. And there's a bolt shot here in blue tunnel and in red tunnel. Once again, a canister here. Kind of a cool explosion. But as far as sightlines, I think I like these sightlines here. There is a lot of sightlines where you can just barely look at the sniper weapon pad. So I think it is very useful. Instead of just being here and being a little bit more exposed, you can kind of just aim here. And I don't really see too many grenades being useful here, except for the frag grenade. The plasma grenades, you can kind of just bounce off over here. But again, not very useful. I feel like. And I think one interesting thing to note is the weapon placements on this map do allow for some interesting plasma grenades. So I think one interesting start for this map is to go up here, grab one of the plasma grenades, throw it at the weapon pad, and throw it towards your side of the base, and have the sniper land with your team here. So it would be a kind of combat evolved alley-oop. I forget the medal. They actually have a medal for this, but it would be useful to get the sniper to your side instead of their side. Unfortunately, I tried it a few times with the scatter shot, but because the scatter shot is kind of just sitting on the ground and not on a weapon pad, floating and, you know, spinning in circles, it doesn't really do that well when you stick stuff to it. And even from a distance, it doesn't really work that well. So kind of just a quick tip that I'd give you guys. I don't recommend throwing grenades at the scatter shot. And one last thing that I do want to show in this bottom middle section is that you don't always have to use a lift. The lift does make some sort of sound. For you, it is a lot louder than it is for your opponents, but if you don't want to opt for using the elevator, you can just jump up here, clamber up, or you can also remember that with these elevators, if you are near an edge, you can kind of just spam clamber, and instead of flying all the way up, you'll just clamber, and you'll sit here. Once again, definitely some interesting ways to get around the map, but for the most part, there isn't anything too tricky about this map as far as bump jumps, bum jumps, thrust jumps, nothing of that sort. Really, it's all about knowing where to go, where to throw your grenades, and really just your movement. I think one of the things, like I said earlier, that I would like to see is a power-up placement on this map. I'm not sure where I would actually put this. Maybe putting it outside would be too much of an exposed area for it, but maybe they can mess around with it. I think the camo power-up would benefit a lot from this map. I think having the camo outside might be a good area to have it located, especially because for those who are out here, you pick up the camo, you still have the sun kind of glaring out here, so you might get a little shimmer of the camo. So if you want to get camo, you want to get away from the light side and go towards the dark side. So thinking about it, it might actually make the camo not that useful for the red side. So maybe some lighting issues there might not even benefit the camo that much on this map. It might be a little bit overpowered for the red team, as they can kind of just go into the blue base where there isn't as much light and kind of get away with a lot more. Those are just my 2 cents. Really, I'm just spitballing here and trying to make sense of all of this map. But that is pretty much it for me today, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this walkthrough, and hopefully you enjoyed my 2 cents on this map. Very interestingly designed. I think if I wanted to change one thing, it would definitely be to add a power-up camo. Other than that, I'll leave you guys with that. If you guys have played on this map, let me know how you guys feel about it. Is it a little bit better playing than the other maps that we've gotten, like Torque, like Overgrowth, or is this map kind of a bust and you'd prefer playing on the older maps once again? As always, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.